Chapter 95. Gu Shengyin puts away the sword in her hand. Thank you for letting me win. She salutes the Sword Emperor and turns to leave. Behind her, the Sword Emperor tries his best to support his body with his hands. Victory and defeat are obvious. Back to the temporary residence, Gu Shengyin can't bear it anymore and spits out a mouthful of blood. The Sword Emperor deserves to be a famous swordsman. Although she is lucky to win, she is also hurt by the sword energy and suffers internal injuries. It is detected that the host's body has been hurt by level B. It is recommended that the host should not have any fierce fighting in a month. The voice of the system rings in Gu Shengyin's mind. Gu Shengyin smiles. I see, I will have a good rest this month. At this time, a carrier rune in Gu Shengyin's storage ring lights up. Her eyes light up. Ichwanka, I already know the result of the battle between you and the Sword Emperor. Are you okay? Shwanka is the person who knows Gu Shengyin's realm of Kendo best. He knows that Gu Shengyin's strength is almost the same as that of the Sword Emperor. Even if she wins, I'm afraid it's a narrow victory. Everything is okay. Senior brother, don't worry. Gu Shengyin thinks for a while and replies to him with 8 words. With Gu Weixin's temperament, he will probably only say these words. On the Lingyun peak of the distant Star Luo sword sect, Shwanka looks at his junior sister apprentice's reply and frowns. Alas, my junior sister apprentice is like my uncle. They are all stuffy and won't take the initiative to say anything. It's really hard to be at ease. Otherwise, after a while, go out and see her? Shwanka thinks in his heart. Gu Shengyin holds the sword with one hand, and her left hand holds something with a faint silver light. She is surrounded by a lot of people. Sword Emperor Bing Exen, there are so many of us. You can't escape. I advise you to put down the Tai Sui in your hand. We won't embarrass you. Yes, put down the Tai Sui fungus, and we won't make things difficult for you. The Tai Sui fungus had appeared in the Twilight Swamp in the south, and Gu Shengyin had waited here for half a month before she finally obtained it. How could she possibly give it away? The Tai Sui in his hand was 800 years old. With it, his master would be able to hold on for a while longer. Gu Shengyin's expression warmed as she put it into her storage ring. Seeing Gu Shengyin's actions, everyone immediately knew her plan. Iceheart Sword Emperor, I advise you not to refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. With such an outstanding beauty like you, why do you want to get caught up in all this fighting and killing? A black-robed man stood in the crowd and gazed at Gu Shengyin with infatuation. Surprisingly, he was a Sword Emperor as well. Gu Shengyin replied to him with a bright sword light. The man didn't expect that she would attack him. After narrowly dodging, he shouted at the people behind him, "Attack her! Be careful, don't kill her. I haven't tasted a beauty in the Sword Emperor realm yet." Bai Xinya leaned against a man in blue and watched Gu Shengyin rush to kill under the siege of a group of people. She stopped talking, which made the man next to her ask, "Xinya, what's wrong?" Bai Xinya seemed to be very hesitant. She bit her lip and said with a forced smile, "Forget it, it's inconvenient. It's nothing." Although she said so, she kept looking at Gu Shengyin's direction. The man asked curiously, "Xinya, do you know the Sword Emperor Bing Exen?" Bai Xinya nodded. "I've seen that senior. She seems quite disdainful of me." Hearing this, the man in blue immediately felt protective. What? That woman is really like that? Bai Xinya seemed to be very embarrassed and nodded with tears in her eyes. Looking at her, those who didn't know would think that Gu Shengyin had done something to her. Chapter 96. In order to show off in front of the beauty, the man said proudly on the spot, "Xinya, don't worry. As the young master of Shitian Pavilion, I'm just a Sword Emperor without any sect. Let me take revenge for you." After that, he said to the old man who had been standing silently behind him, "Uncle Wen, doesn't that Sword Emperor Bing Exen have a Tai Sui? Go and help me snatch it. I want to give it to Xinya as a gift." Uncle Wen hesitated. Young master, such a young Sword Emperor might have a powerful master behind her. We'd better not provoke her easily. Hearing this, the man in blue hesitated. But when he turned his head and saw Bai Xinya looking at him with admiration, his blood rushed to his head. If she really has a master, she would have reported it long ago. She must be just an unorthodox sword cultivator. Uncle Wen, you don't have to worry too much. So what if she has a powerful background? Do you think our Shitian pavilion is afraid of other people? Uncle Wen sighed secretly. Yes, sir. Gu Shengyin was already a little tired. Among the people besieging her, there were at least 3 sword emperors. If she was not careful, there would be another wound on her body. At this moment, a powerful aura locked on her. Gu Shengyin's heart trembled. He looked up and saw a gray-robed elder. My young master wants the Tai Sui fungus in your hands. If it's convenient for you, my Shitian pavilion can give you a generous compensation. Shitian pavilion? Gu Shengyin looked over there. As expected, she saw Bai Xinya's figure. The young master of Shitian pavilion, Shi Lufeng, was the scumbag Gu Shengyin fell in love with in the original plot. After Gu Shengyin came to this world, she had been practicing hard for 10 years. Naturally, she did not fall in love with Shi Lufeng in the original plot. She did not expect to meet him at this time. The pressure on the old man in gray was too strong. He was actually a sword venerable. But it was absolutely impossible for her to hand over the Tai Sui. Gu Shengyin said coldly, the Tai Sui is very useful to me. You'd better give up this idea. When had the gray-robed old man ever been rejected in such a blatant manner? His expression darkened. Since that's the case, this old man will have to put in some effort. The aura of a sword venerable exploded in an instant, and the 3 sword emperors who were besieging Gu Shengyin retreated one after another. Gu Shengyin only felt an aura coming towards him. He couldn't suppress the injuries in his body for a moment, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. She raised the sword in her hand. The system shouted anxiously in Gu Shengyin's mind, the host situation is not optimistic, please do not force yourself. Gu Shengyin said, I specially found this Tai Sui for master. I don't know when it will appear again. You can't hand it over. Gu Shengyin only felt a chill as the long sword pierced through his body. She felt a little weak in her body. Using her hand to support her sword, she knelt on the ground. A hint of killing intent flashed in the eyes of the gray-robed old man. Since they had become enemies, such a person couldn't be left in the world. How dare you? An angry voice seemed to come from the sky. The gray-robed old man only felt a flash in front of his eyes, and his body was cold. A snow-white corner of clothes flashed past, and this was the last scene he saw. Xuanke didn't look at the gray-robed old man lying on the ground. He bent down and picked up Gu Shengyin. Senior brother? Gu Shengyin only felt a warm aura surrounding her. The familiar feeling made her feel extremely at ease, and she fell asleep with ease. Chapter 97. When Xianke saw his junior sister covered in blood, his heart, which had always been calm, actually started to panic. He was afraid that he was a step too late. Fortunately, he hugged the person in his arms. Fortunately, the situation wasn't too bad. He turned around and his indifferent eyes swept across the dumbfounded crowd. Sword Saint. Someone couldn't help but cry out in a low voice. To be able to kill a sword saint without even drawing his sword, who else could it be but a sword saint? Xuanke ignored these people and turned to leave with Gu Shengyin in his arms. These people secretly breathed a sigh of relief, especially those who had participated in the siege of Gu Shengyin. They were secretly happy that they had escaped. Who knew that in the next moment, a sword light that seemed to be able to cover the sky would descend? Xuanke's words resounded in everyone's hearts. Those who hurt my junior sister will pay with blood. One after another, blood-curdling screams came from all directions. None of those who had participated in the siege of Gu Shengyin were spared. Bai Xinya couldn't help but shiver. Her gaze drifted in the direction that Xuanke had left. The sword saint? Was he so powerful? If someone could protect her like this? She lowered her eyes, hiding the desire in them. When Gu Shengyin woke up, she felt pain all over her body. System, can I apply to block out the pain? She discussed with the system. The system was unwilling to cooperate. The system has warned the host before to stop dangerous actions. This will lead to extremely serious consequences, even the death of the host's physical body in this world. Since the host didn't listen to the advice, then you must be prepared to suffer. For some reason, Gu Xingyin could hear the concern in the system's words. She begged for mercy. All right, I'll be careful next time. Being careful, not guaranteeing that it wouldn't happen again. Gu Xingyin thought that there were some things that could not be avoided just because one knew the consequences. After all, the system was just an artificial intelligence. It couldn't understand Gu Xingyin's subtext. Moreover, the host's performance had always been excellent. The naive system was quickly coaxed into forgiving Gu Xingyin. Junior sister, you're awake? Schwanke came in with a tray in his hands. Senior brother. Gu Xingyin looked at him with an inexplicable sense of guilt. Since you're awake, drink the medicine. Schwanke ignored him and got up to leave. Senior brother? Gu Xingyin quickly grabbed his sleeve. Schwanke looked at her with half-closed eyes. Senior brother, are you angry? Gu Xingyin said with certainty. Schwanke looked at his junior sister carefully. He didn't even notice that the little girl who looked like she was carved out of jade had grown so big without him noticing. His junior sister took after martial uncle Ling Xiao. She was usually silent and looked at everyone with a cold expression. Only when she was with him would she occasionally show the little temper of an ordinary girl. But that lively junior sister was now pale. Her lips were red without a trace of blood. When he saw her, she was kneeling on the ground weakly. He didn't know if she was dead or alive. No one knew how flustered he was at that time. Schwanke looked at Gu Xingyin's confused expression and the nameless anger in his heart suddenly flared up. Why would senior brother be angry? What is senior brother angry about? Angry that you're still holding on despite your injuries? Angry that you're so capable that you can fight 3 sword emperors and a sword venerable alone? Or angry that you've only been out for a few short months and you've gotten yourself into this state? He pried away Gu Xingyin's hand that was grabbing onto his sleeve one by one, but was blocked by Gu Xingyin's other hand. I was wrong, senior brother. Gu Xingyin obediently admitted her mistake. She looked at Schwanke eagerly. Her clear eyes were filled with his figure. Looking at Gu Xingyin like this, Schwanke suddenly felt his anger dissipate. Chapter 98. Gu Xingyin stayed at Schwanke's Lingyun Peak for a long time. Schwanke didn't allow her to leave until all her injuries were healed. She took the time to go to Lingxiao Peak and gave the Tai Sui fungus to her master. Venerable Lingxiao just shook his head. My swordsmanship has reached the extreme. My only chance of survival is to make another breakthrough. Otherwise, I'll just struggle at death's door for a few hundred years. Gu Xingyin felt bitter in her heart. She smiled. With master's attainments in swordsmanship, you'll definitely make a breakthrough. Venerable Lingxiao looked at his only disciple with a gentle gaze. The only thing I'm worried about is you. However, I've already asked your senior brother to take care of you. He'll take good care of you. His words indicated that he was prepared for the worst. Gu Xingyin had been depressed since she returned from Lingxiao Peak. Schwanke knew that she was worried about martial uncle. Life and death are up to fate. Martial uncle has already accepted it. Junior sister, why do you have to be so stubborn? A swordsman must have the determination to face everything head-on. Gu Xingyin understood this logic. Although she could accept it rationally, she couldn't get used to it so quickly emotionally. After all, ever since she came to this world, Ling Xiao was her master and family. He had accompanied and taught her for 10 years. Schwanke also knew that other than his junior sister herself, no one else could do anything. Schwanke suggested that Gu Xingyin start teaching in the Stellar Sword sect. With her identity as a sword emperor, it was more than enough to teach ordinary swordsman disciples. Schwanke just wanted Gu Xingyin to find something to distract her. Since he mentioned it to the Star River sect master, it was naturally impossible for him to refuse. When Bai Xinya returned to her small courtyard, she happened to hear a few outer disciples who lived in the same courtyard talking. I heard that she's a sword emperor? In terms of seniority, she's our great grandmaster. When the female disciples saw Bai Xinya enter, they all stopped talking and did not say anything else. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Bai Xinya felt extremely wronged in the face of undisguised isolation. Her heart ached and tears welled up in her eyes. Oh, don't you cry. One of the female disciples with a fiery temper said directly, If those inner sect senior brothers see this, they will definitely think that we bullied you again. This crime is not something that we, as mere outer sect disciples, can bear. Bai Xinya choked and held back the tears that were about to flow out of her eyes. Seeing that none of them had the intention to talk to her, she could only silently walk back to her room. Bah! Who are you pretending to be weak all day long? The woman who spoke earlier said disdainfully. Another female disciple said, don't those senior brothers like this type? They complained to each other. There were very few female swordsmen in the first place. Those who chose to become swordsmen were all determined people. Naturally, they didn't like Bai Xinya's tearful attitude. Moreover, they didn't treat Bai Xinya like this in the beginning. But later, they slowly realized that as long as they talked about something in the courtyard, the entire outer sect would know about it within a day. Later, when they found out that it was Bai Xinya's doing, they couldn't help but feel disgusted. When they found Bai Xinya, she was still looking at them with pure and innocent eyes. There's nothing that can't be told. Senior sisters, you didn't talk about anything bad. Their courtyard had become the joke of the outer sect. Chapter 99. Starnet Sword Sect's Sword Discourse Hall. Zhao Shiming woke up very early today because he had heard the news a few days ago that a grandmaster would be teaching the disciples in the Sword Discourse Hall. Perhaps those who had taken an elder as their master wouldn't care about the teachings of a sword emperor. But for these inner sect disciples who hadn't taken a master yet, it was a rare opportunity. Not to mention those outer sect disciples with ordinary aptitude. However, although he had arrived early, when he arrived at the Sword Discourse Hall, he found that the best seats had already been occupied. It turned out that there were even more people who had arrived earlier than him. Zhao Shiming saw Bai Xinya in the crowd with a glance. Her seat was extremely close to the front. It was impossible for a mere outer sect disciple like her to occupy such a seat. Zhao Shiming's eyes swept to the side, and as expected, he saw a male disciple dressed in inner sect disciple attire sitting beside Bai Xinya. Zhao Shiming recognized this person. He was among the inner sect disciples this year, a genius with an 8th level sword heart. The two of them were intimate, and their relationship could be seen at a glance. Zhao Shiming smiled coldly. Since that day in the wilderness when he was reminded by that unknown senior, he began to secretly observe Bai Xinya. The more he knew, the colder his heart became. He also deeply felt that he was simply blind to be so devoted to Bai Xinya before. That woman was clearly dragging him along. While maintaining an intimate relationship with him, she even maintained an ambiguous relationship with several inner and outer sect disciples at the same time. He even saw an outer sect disciple who had been abandoned by Bai Xinya. After Bai Xinya realized that he was of no use to her, Bai Xinya's face immediately changed. That outer sect disciple was unwilling to give up and continued to pester her. He was directly beaten half to death by Bai Xinya's pursuers. During the entire process, Bai Xinya only hid behind others, pretending that she couldn't bear to see blood. She didn't open her mouth to plead for that outer sect disciple. This kind of woman wasn't weak and pitiful at all. She was clearly selfish and cold to the extreme. After that, Zhao Shiming distanced himself from Bai Xinya. If he continued to be with her, he wouldn't even know how he died one day. Zhao Shiming came back to his senses, and found that all the seats in the Sword Discourse Hall had been taken. There were even many people who stood outside the door because they had no seats. "She's here," he heard someone say. Zhao Shiming subconsciously looked up as if a cold fragrance had brushed past his body. He was stunned. It's actually her? Zhao Shiming recognized at a glance that the white-robed woman sitting at the head of the table was the senior who had saved his life in the wilderness that day. No one would forget a person like Gu Shengyin after a single glance. So, she was actually his great ancestor. Bai Xinya also recognized Gu Shengyin. Unlike Zhao Shiming's mixed feelings, when she saw Gu Shengyin, her heart was full of uneasiness and fear. This woman was actually her great ancestor? She felt uneasy in her heart. She had met her twice before. The first time, this great ancestor master had clearly expressed her dislike for her. The second time, she was standing with the people who had besieged her. Although it could be said that one who didn't know was not guilty, if this great ancestor were to label her as disrespectful to the elders of the sect, she, Bai Xinya, could only admit defeat. Gu Shengyin naturally also saw Bai Xinya. However, she only glanced at her briefly before moving her gaze away. As long as this woman didn't provoke her, Gu Shengyin, who only wanted to complete her mission, didn't have the extra effort to deal with her. Chapter 100. Bai Xinya saw that Gu Shengyin's eyes fell on her and quickly moved away, as if she didn't know her. She breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that this great ancestor didn't recognize her. But at the same time, a sense of unwillingness emerged from her heart. This great ancestor looked at her as if she were looking at ants. Isn't she just extremely talented and worshipped a good master? We're all human beings. Why does she look down on me? If Gu Shengyin could hear her heart, she would tell her, "Girl, you really think too much. Gu Weixin is like this. She doesn't have any extra feelings when she looks at anyone." What's more, everyone was looked at by Gu Shengyin, but only she, Gu Shengyin, thought that she looked down on him. There was a Buddha in her heart, and all she saw was Buddha. After all, Gu Shengyin was a sword emperor powerhouse. It was not difficult for her to teach a group of ordinary swordsmen. What's more, she had knowledge beyond this world in her mind. Her teaching style was different from the other elders of the Star Luo sword sect. She omitted those obscure chants and expressed her understanding of swordsmanship in a more simple and clear way. She even helped those swordsmen to answer their doubts. There was no doubt that her lectures were extremely popular among these disciples. The morning passed quickly. Gu Shengyin was about to get up and leave when she suddenly felt a familiar breath. Her expression changed and she walked out of the door. Sure enough, she saw Xuanke waiting on one side. "Senior brother, why are you here?" Seeing her lover, Gu Shengyin's face was obviously softer. At this time, the disciples of the sword discussion hall didn't leave. They admired this great ancestor, but they were also frozen by the cold air around her. At this moment, seeing that this cold great ancestor was no longer releasing cold air, they were curious about who she was and how she could have such ability. When they heard Gu Shengyin's address, they were all stunned. "Senior brother?" It was said that this martial ancestor had become the disciple of one of the two grand elders in the sect, the sword saint elder Ling Xiao. However, he had never heard of this grand elder having other disciples. Others, including the sect master, had to address Gu Shengyin as grandmaster in terms of seniority. Wait a minute. There was one more person. Lingyun Peak, which was next to Lingxiao Peak, also had a grand elder. For a moment, everyone looked at Xuanke with burning eyes. Bai Xinya was no exception. That was a sword saint. Bai Xinya's eyes flickered. If this sword saint expert could take a liking to her, who in the Star Azura sword sect, or even the Sky Below Great World, would dare to look down on her? What's more, this grand elder was so good-looking. Bai Xinya secretly blushed. She suddenly stood up and walked towards Gu Shengyin and Xuanke. Xuanke was talking to his junior sister when he sensed someone approaching. He glanced at Bai Xinya, feeling slightly impatient. Who was this person? How could she be so unruly? Gu Shengyin also saw Bai Xinya. She was rather curious. What was this woman up to now? Bai Xinya walked gracefully in front of the two and bowed. Disciple Bai Xinya pays respect to the two seniors. Her voice carried a natural charm, and her watery eyes looked at Xuanke affectionately. At this moment, Gu Shengyin knew what she was thinking. She had actually set her sights on her lover. Gu Shengyin did not say anything, but waited to see how Xuanke would react. Xuanke frowned. He felt that Bai Xinya's gaze was very strange, and felt a little guilty. This kind of thing should not be seen by his junior sister. Chapter 101. He looked at Bai Xinya's expectant eyes. Seeing that his junior sister had no intention of speaking, he asked, "What's the matter?" The smile on Bai Xinya's face became even more charming. She said shyly, "This disciple admires Senior's elegance, so I came to pay my respects to Senior." In her experience, when a man saw a beautiful girl admiring him, he would definitely be very proud. This grand elder would definitely be interested in her. Bai Xinya couldn't help but smile. However, Xuanke's next words made her smile freeze on her face. "Which peak are you from? You don't know the rules." Schwanka frowned. You interrupted the conversation between your master and your elders because of this reason. Who is your master? Bai Xinya's face turned pale. She didn't expect things to develop like this. She still wanted to say something, but the pressure from Schwanka's body made it hard for her to breathe. She could only respectfully lower her head and say, "This disciple is an outer sect disciple. Currently, I don't have a master." Schwanka nodded. So you're an outer sect disciple. You lack guidance and don't know etiquette. I don't blame you. His words made Bai Xinya feel so ashamed that she wanted to die. Did he mean that she didn't have a good upbringing? Because Gu Shengyin hadn't left yet, the disciples in the Sword Discourse Hall didn't get up. At this moment, their gazes all fell on Bai Xinya. Bai Xinya's figure was on the verge of collapse. She felt that everyone was laughing at her. Schwanka looked at her and frowned. This kind of behavior, was she a sword cultivator? He glanced at Gu Shengyin, who had a calm expression. Yes, junior sister is much better. He spread out his divine sense. Elder Xing Shi, who was in charge of the outer sect, was drinking tea in his room. When he heard Schwanka's voice, he was so scared that he almost choked. Come to the Sword Discourse Hall quickly. He didn't have time to think about what had happened. Without saying a word, he put down the teacup in his hand and came to the Sword Discourse Hall. Greetings, Venerable Ling Yun. Greetings, Junior Grand Uncle. Elder Xing Shi bowed to the two of them. Although Gu Shengyin's cultivation level was not as high as his, in terms of seniority, she was his martial grandaunt. Not to mention, the 18-year-old Sword Emperor. Elder Xing Shi clearly understood that it was only a matter of time before young martial granduncle became a sword venerable, or even a sword great master. In fact, it was extremely likely that he would enter the legendary realm. He was sincerely convinced by this salute. Schwanka said indifferently, "Are you in charge of the outer sect disciples? Although he's not your personal disciple, you should still teach him some etiquette and what he should and shouldn't do." Elder Xing Shi was confused. He glanced at Bai Xinya, who was standing on the side. Although he didn't understand what had happened, he could guess that this disciple had angered the two people in front of him. No matter how he was going to deal with it, it was more important to apologize first. He hurriedly said, "It's my fault for being negligent in my management. Please forgive me, Junior Grand Uncle." Seeing enlightened Master Xing Shi's attitude, Schwanka didn't say much. He pulled Gu Shengyin and left. Elder Xing Shi respectfully watched the two of them leave. He looked at Bai Xinya, who was standing on the side with an aggrieved face. His face was as gloomy as water. "Come with me." He pointed at a few outer sect disciples and said, "You guys, come with me. Tell me what happened." After the people involved left, the disciples who were still in the Sword Discourse Hall burst into an uproar. They were discussing what had just happened. Zhao Ximing sneered and left. Chapter 102. Tell me what happened just now. Elder Xing Shi looked at Bai Xinya with a solemn expression. Bai Xinya could not help but shudder when a sword venerable expert looked at her with such a gaze. She cowered and said, "I just admire the elegance of the two martial granduncles and wanted to pay my respects." Elder Xing Shi looked at the two disciples beside him and said, "You two, tell me the whole story. Don't leave out a single word." The two disciples did not dare to hide anything. Elder Xing Shi waved his hand to let them leave. He looked at Bai Xinya. After being in charge of the outer sect for so many years, he had seen all kinds of people. The two martial granduncles, who were focused on cultivation and did not care about worldly affairs, might not be able to see through Bai Xinya's thoughts, but it could not be hidden from him. "I've lived for so many years and have seen many ambitious people, but it's the first time I've seen someone like you." His expression was gloomy. Sword cultivation focuses on the cultivation of the heart. You don't think about improving yourself, and your mind is actually filled with these crooked methods. How can you make any progress on the path of the sword? You should be glad that martial granduncles do not intend to pursue this matter. Otherwise, no one will be able to protect you. Go to Reflection Peak and stay there. Come down when you're in a good mood. Bai Xinya immediately became exhausted. Reflection Peak, as the name suggested, was a place where the disciples of the Stellar Sword sect who had made mistakes reflected on their mistakes. It was bone-chilling and desolate all year round. How could one live such a life? However, no one in the outer sect could change Elder Xing Shi's decision. Gu Shengyin had already returned to Lingyun Peak with Xuanke. Ever since she was injured, she had been staying at Lingyun Peak where Xuanke was at. Now that her injuries were mostly healed, neither of them had the intention to let Gu Shengyin return to Lingxiao Peak. However, Venerable Lingxiao was in seclusion, so it was better not to disturb him. "Junior sister, why do you keep looking at me?" Xuanke was a little puzzled. Ever since the two of them left the Sword Discourse Hall, his junior sister had been looking at him with a strange expression. Gu Shengyin suddenly had a mischievous thought. "I see that senior brother's face is like jade, your figure is like an orchid, and you are as graceful as an immortal. You can't blame that female disciple for having thoughts about you." Xuanke had never been tormented or teased by anyone before, so he actually blushed for a moment. "Junior martial sister, don't talk nonsense." The system was also looking at Gu Shengyin curiously. It seemed that with the completion of one mission after another, the host's personality seemed to have become more lively. Gu Shengyin suddenly smiled. Xuanke looked up and saw this smile. He always knew that his junior sister was beautiful, but he never thought that his junior sister's smile would be so beautiful. It was as if a beam of light had suddenly broken through the darkness, stunning and dazzling. He inexplicably felt that his heart was beating a little faster when he saw this smile. "Senior brother, you're so handsome. It's normal for girls to admire you. Senior brother, don't be shy." Xuanke didn't answer Gu Shengyin. He looked at his junior sister's smiling face and suddenly asked an inexplicable question. "The junior sister's color is better than that of senior brother, and there will be many people who admire junior sister?" Gu Shengyin is stuck for a while. Gu Weixin's appearance is really beautiful, but it's too high to reach. There must be people who admire her, but no one dares to say it. Xuanke took her silence as acquiescence. For a moment, he was so upset that he blurted out, "Sword is important. Junior sister is still young. Don't be distracted by this kind of thing." Chapter 103. After that, Gu Shengyin regularly lectured on the way of the sword at the Sword Discourse Hall every few days. The news outside also gradually spread. Not long ago, the Ice Heart Sword Emperor who made a name for herself in the Tianlan continent was actually the martial grandmaster who lectured on the way of the sword for them. Gu Shengyin very clearly felt that the number of disciples coming to the Sword Discourse Hall had increased recently. Moreover, those disciples all looked at her with an expression of worship. For some reason, Xuanke would come to the Sword Discourse Hall every day after she finished lecturing on the way of the sword to bring her back to Lingyun Peak. Until one day, the system suddenly sent a message to Gu Shengyin. Bai Xinya and Shi Lufeng actually appeared together in the Phoenix Perching Valley in the southern region of the Tianlan Great World. Gu Shengyin, who knew the original plot, naturally knew that this Phoenix Perching Valley was clearly an active volcano. This was where Bai Xinya was poisoned by the fire poison. Bai Xinya was currently reflecting on her mistakes at Reflection Peak. How did she run to Phoenix Perching Valley? Before Gu Shengyin could ask, she received the system's order. "You want me to go to Phoenix Perching Valley and stop Bai Xinya from obtaining the fiery eye-flowing serum?" Gu Shengyin asked. To be honest, ever since Gu Shengyin started accepting missions, the system almost never asked her to carry out any missions. Suddenly giving such an order made her feel a little curious. The system didn't know the twists and turns in Gu Shengyin's mind. It said methodically, "The fiery eye-flowing serum's effect is to cleanse the marrow and temper the heart of the sword. Bai Xinya's goal is to use the fiery eye-flowing serum to raise her aptitude. The system has detected that Bai Xinya's malice towards the host is 70%. Current status towards the host, hostile. It's very likely that she will pose a threat to the host. The system has the responsibility to eliminate dangerous factors for the host. Therefore, the host must stop Bai Xinya from obtaining the fiery eye-flowing serum." Gu Shengyin nodded and suddenly asked, "I don't think I have offended Bai Xinya. Why does she hate me?" The system said, "Analyzing. Analysis failed. The human heart is too complicated. The system cannot analyze Bai Xinya's psychological changes." Gu Shengyin, Listening to the system's serious answer, I suddenly feel like laughing. Since there was a mission, Gu Shengyin naturally had to complete it. She went to Schwanka's residence and told him the purpose of her visit. You want to go to the Phoenix Perching Valley? Schwanka frowned. It's hot there all year round and not a single blade of grass grows there. What's there to see? I've had some enlightenment during this period of time, and I'm about to go into seclusion for a period of time. Why don't I go with you in a few days? Gu Shengyin thought to herself, by the time you come out of seclusion, the fiery eye-flowing serum would already be in by Xinya's hands. She shook her head. Senior brother, I'm just bored and want to go out for a walk. Don't worry, I promise I won't go out and cause trouble this time. I'm a sword cultivator at the Sword Emperor realm after all. I have the ability to protect myself. Schwanka had no choice but to say, then you have to be safe. If there's anything, you must contact me immediately. Gu Shengyin nodded. She was about to leave when Schwanka suddenly called out to her. Seeing his junior sister looking at him with some doubt, Schwanka only felt his face heat up slightly. Junior sister, you're inexperienced in the world. Don't be deceived by others outside. Especially when I heard that many men will use flowery words to coax beautiful women. Gu Shengyin heard this and could not maintain her facial expression for a moment. She burst out laughing. I know, senior brother. Don't worry, I won't even look at those who aren't as good-looking as you. Chapter 104. This was the only feeling Gu Shengyin had when she stood in this Phoenix Perching Valley. As the Sword Emperor, she should be immune to both heat and cold. But in this place, she still felt the shocking heat. No wonder it was a place that could give birth to a treasure like the fiery eye liquid. The volcanoes in Qing Shiji's world that she had experienced before couldn't be compared to this at all. The system only gave her the task of stopping Bai Xinya from getting the fiery eye liquid. As for how to do it, there were no requirements. Actually, Gu Shengyin had the simplest way to eliminate Bai Xinya's threat to her, kill her. But she didn't think of doing so. Firstly, Bai Xinya had that white lotus halo. According to the system, it had the effect of increasing luck. It was hard to say whether it could take her life. Secondly, Gu Shengyin herself wasn't willing to do so. She was a created human and had always cherished life. If Bai Xinya didn't really do anything to her, she couldn't indulge herself to kill someone who only had evil intentions towards her. At this time, Bai Xinya was still on the way to the Phoenix Perching Valley with Shi Lufeng. Although the Phoenix Perching Valley could give birth to the legendary fiery eye liquid, the chance of it being born was really too small. It might not even appear once in 1,000 years. So usually, other than some people who occasionally came here to try their luck, not many people would keep watch here. When Gu Shengyin arrived, there were only 2 people here. One was unexpectedly an acquaintance. It was Zhao Shiming, an inner disciple of the Star-Gathering Sword sect whose life she had once saved. Great-Grand Marshal Uncle? Zhao Shiming was clearly very happy to see Gu Shengyin. He glanced at Gu Shengyin and suddenly said in a low voice, Great-Grand Marshal Uncle, please come with me. Gu Shengyin followed him to one side. Only then did Zhao Shiming look at her, Marshal Grand, it would be best for you to conceal your appearance. After all, you are now a rather famous person in the great sky below world. It would be very easy for people to connect you to your identity. This time, I have received definite news. On the 15th of this month, when the moon is at its fullest, there will be fire-eye oozing magma appearing in the Phoenix Perching Valley. In order to avoid being targeted, it is better for Marshal Granduncle to conceal it. He looked at Gu Shengyin with a sincere gaze. Gu Shengyin was surprised. Such important news, you actually told me, are you not afraid that I have other thoughts? Zhao Shiming smiled wryly. With your 10th order sword heart, what's the use of this fire eye liquid? Moreover, he looked seriously at Gu Shengyin. This disciple believes that Marshal Granduncle is definitely not that kind of person. Gu Shengyin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She felt that she had met an admirer. However, she glanced at Zhao Shiming. She found this person pleasing to the eye. If she obtained the fire eye liquid, it wouldn't be bad to give him a favor. Since Zhao Shiming was so sure that the fire eye liquid would appear, presumably Bai Xinya and the others had also received the same news. In the next few days, Gu Shengyin and Zhao Ximing quietly waited for the arrival of the 15th. Occasionally, they would send a message to Shuangke, indicating that they were all well. Soon, Bai Xinya and Shi Lufeng arrived. Gu Shengyin glanced at them. Shi Lufeng, as the young master of the Shitian Pavilion, definitely wouldn't come alone. A sword emperor and a sword venerable. It seemed that Shi Lufeng was indeed favored. She didn't feel that after her identity was exposed, the people of the Shitian Pavilion would still dare to make a move against her. Unless they could bear the anger of the two sword saints of the star-scattered sword sect. Chapter 105. Bai Xinya also saw Zhao Ximing. She was a little uneasy, afraid that Zhao Ximing would come to her. Since catching up with Shi Lufeng, she has been alienated from Zhao Ximing and others. Of course, she doesn't think it's because Shi Liufeng's temper is too overbearing, but she feels that she has found true love. In fact, she thinks too much. Zhao Ximing doesn't mean to pay attention to her at all. Instead, Bai Xinya looks at Gu Shengyin. Because of the cloak, she didn't recognize who Gu Shengyin is. Looking at Zhao Ximing's attentive appearance to her, she thought it was his new love. Thinking of this possibility, she was unhappy again. She felt that she thought she treated Zhao Ximing with sincerity. Unexpectedly, she found a new person so quickly, which made her feel betrayed. She completely forgot that there was a Shi Lufeng standing beside her. The more Bai Xinya thought about it, the more unwilling she felt. She got up and walked to Zhao Ximing. "Brother Zhao, long time no see." Zhao Ximing nodded coldly. That Shi Lufeng stood beside Bai Xinya, just like a flower protector. Looking at Zhao Ximing's expression is very alert. Gu Shengyin is suddenly curious. What happened to the original body Gu Weixin? She gave up so many excellent pursuers and looked at Shi Lufeng in this man. "Brother Zhao, are you here for the fire eye?" As soon as Bai Xinya said this, the eyes around all looked over. Zhao Ximing once again scolded himself for being blind at the beginning. He actually liked such a brainless woman. Can such words be said casually? Seeing that Zhao Ximing didn't speak, Bai Xinya suddenly bit her lip. "I'm also here for the fire eye." "Brother Zhao, your sword heart level is so high that you certainly don't need it. Can you give it to me?" Before Zhao Ximing could refuse, Gu Shengyin on the side spoke. Bai Xinya only felt that the voice sounded familiar, but she didn't think about it. "For you, what right do you have to answer my question on behalf of Senior Marshal Brother Zhao?" Bai Xinya was not as gentle towards Gu Shengyin, who was also a woman. At this time, Zhao Ximing recovered from the shock of the goddess speaking up for him. Hearing that the goddess was being questioned, he immediately said bluntly, "Her opinion is my opinion. It just so happens that I also need the fiery eye fluid. Let's just rely on our own abilities." Bai Xinya looked at Zhao Ximing in disbelief. "Senior Brother Zhao, you weren't like this before?" Zhao Ximing silently said in his heart, "I think so too. I must have been possessed by the devil in the past." Shi Lufeng was already impatient. He put his arm around Bai Xinya's waist and looked at Zhao Ximing and Gu Shengyin in disdain. "Xinya, don't worry. I promise that the fiery eye liquid will be yours." Bai Xinya looked at the two experts standing behind him and smiled sweetly, nestling in his arms obediently. At this time, the surrounding temperature suddenly rose sharply. Zhao Ximing and the others were fine, but Bai Xinya screamed. Her exposed skin couldn't withstand the high temperature, and a string of blisters appeared on it. "I'm afraid that the fiery eye liquid is about to be born." Gu Shengyin glanced at Zhao Ximing. The two nodded and rushed towards the depths of Phoenix Perching Valley. "You guys go in too. You must bring the fiery eye liquid back." Shi Lufeng comforted Bai Xinya and turned to order the two experts behind him. Chapter 106. Gu Shengyin and Zhao Ximing were the first to act. The system was confident. "Host, don't worry. Under the same conditions, your chances of obtaining the treasure are higher than anyone else." The saying that the protagonist is favored by the laws of the world is not without reason. The truth was just as the system had said. While the others were still fretting over whether or not the magma had appeared, Zhao Ximing had already followed Gu Shengyin all the way to the place where the magma was flowing out of the Eye of Fire. Zhao Ximing said joyfully, Rumor has it that the fire eye flowing lava is extremely hard to find. Normally, it would take 10 days to half a month to find it. I didn't think that our luck would be so good this time, to actually obtain this item on the first day. Gu Xingyin could only maintain her smile. Zhao Ximing carefully took out a palm-sized white jade bottle. Gu Xingyin could tell at a glance that this was made of cold jade. It seemed that Zhao Ximing had made a lot of preparations for this fire eye flowing lava. The entire pool of fiery eye liquid was actually completely filled by this small bottle that was no more than an inch long. Zhao Ximing carefully put away the bottle. After hesitating, he said to Gu Xing, "Elder, this fire eye flowing lava." Gu Xingyin had already opened her mouth to interrupt him. "I have no use for this fire eye flowing lava, you can keep it." Zhao Ximing was a bit ashamed. He originally planned to ask Gu Xingyin to see if she could give this to him. After all, one portion of fire eye flowing lava could only be used by one person. He really needed this item. He didn't think that she had the idea to give it to him from the start. Gu Shengxing knew what he was thinking from his appearance. She said, "I originally came here to see the legendary scenery of the Phoenix Perching Valley. Encountering the fire eye flowing lava was just a coincidence. You don't have to feel guilty." Seeing this, Zhao Ximing didn't say anything else. He solemnly bowed towards Gu Xing. "Disciple thanks Grand Marshal Uncle for his kindness. If there is a chance in the future, Disciple will do his best to repay." Gu Xingyin didn't take this promise seriously, but Zhao Ximing remembered it in his heart. "Now that everyone is looking for the fiery eye liquid, let's leave this place quickly. It's only been a day. No one will believe that we've already obtained something," Gu Xingyin said. Zhao Ximing nodded. Sure enough, when the two of them arrived at the exit of the Phoenix Perching Valley, they saw the forces of the Washing Heavens Pavilion guarding there. It seemed that they had already planned to forcefully seize the fiery eye flowing plasma even if they didn't find it. "Junior sister, I wonder why Master called us back in such a hurry?" "That's right. It wasn't easy for us to wait for the flowing flame plasma to appear. Who would have thought that before we even started looking for it, it would already be discovered by a sect?" When the guard at the door saw the two of them in a hurry, it seemed like they really did have something urgent to attend to. In addition, the fiery eye lava had just appeared, so it was impossible for it to be found so quickly. He didn't question them in detail and just let them go. Gu Xingyin heaved a sigh of relief. Although she was not afraid of a fight, it would inevitably delay time. If she attracted the attention of the venerable sword master, it would not be so easy to escape. "I'm preparing to return to the sect and go into seclusion. I wonder if Great Grand Marshal Uncle is all right?" Gu Xingyin's mission was already completed. She nodded. "I'm also preparing to return to the sect." The two of them didn't delay. Almost as soon as they returned to the sect, they heard the bounty issued by the Washing Heavens Pavilion. Whoever could cure the fire poison, the Washing Heavens Pavilion would treat them with a position of worship. Gu Xingyin understood. It seemed that Bai Xinya still couldn't avoid the original plot. Chapter 107. Clap. Shi Lufeng looked at Yi Shiwen, not looking at the cup on the ground, and roared, "All of you are useless. Isn't it just a fire poison and no one can cure it?" Lufeng, "I'm in pain." Bai Xinya's cry of pain came from the inner room. Shi Lufeng hurried into the room and saw Bai Xinya tossing and turning on the bed. Her whole body's skin showed an abnormal flush, and it felt scorching hot to the touch. Bai Xinya saw Shi Lufeng come in and couldn't help but shout, "Lufeng! Lufeng, save me!" Shi Lufeng saw Bai Xinya in this state, and his heart was in great pain. Bai Xinya's head drooped down weakly. Shi Lufeng withdrew his hand from her nape and went out. He really loved her. There had never been a woman who could make him feel this way. "Young master?" At this time, a follower behind him hesitantly opened his mouth. "What's the matter? Just say it." The follower hesitated for a long time, but still said, "I heard that there is a way to cure this fire poison, and it requires the blood essence of someone who has the Ice Soul Sword heart." Blood essence was the most essential part of spirit. It was undoubtedly an extremely important existence for sword cultivators. Not to mention the most precious blood essence. Shi Liufeng's eyes darkened. Everyone in the world knows that only the Ice Soul Sword Heart of Star Luo Sword Sect has the Ice Soul Sword Heart, the direct disciple of Venerable Lingxiao. Are you asking me to offend a sword saint expert? Star Luo Sword Sect would never agree to use half of the blood essence of an 18-year-old sword emperor expert to save an outer disciple. The follower hurriedly knelt on the ground in fear. I've only heard of this matter. I don't have any other thoughts. Alright, get up. Don't mention this matter to anyone else. The follower left trembling with fear. Shi Lufeng stood alone in the same place, slowly sinking into deep thought. On this side, Gu Shengyin already knew that Bai Xinya had been poisoned by the fire poison. She knew that if nothing unexpected happened, Shi Lufeng would soon know the way to cure it, and in the end he would still target her. Gu Shengyin had to admit that Shi Lufeng really loved Bai Xinya to the bone. But this couldn't be a reason for him to wantonly hurt others for Bai Xinya. Gu Shengyin decided to give them a big gift. The next day, a piece of news. It was said that the lover of Shi Lufeng, the young master of the Washing Heavens Pavilion, was poisoned by fire, and the only antidote was the blood essence of the Ice Heart Sword Empress of the Star Gathering Sword Sect. As soon as the rumor came out, gossiping, everyone waited. Mainly, both were too famous. Although Shi Lufeng Pavilion could be considered a big force in the Great Sky Below world, compared to Star Luo Sword Sect, there was still a big gap. Needless to say, Ice Soul Sword Heart made a big name for herself in the Great Sky Below world a long time ago, and then exposed her identity in the swamp battle. She turned out to be the personal disciple of Star Luo Sword Sect's sword saint expert, Venerable Lingxiao, an 18-year-old sword emperor, a peerless genius born with the Ice Soul Sword Heart. Shi Liufeng's face was livid. He had obviously concealed this matter very well. Who on earth leaked the news? In this way, if Xinya's fire poison was cured or something happened to Ice Soul Sword Heart, everyone's first suspect would be Shi Lufeng Pavilion. Gu Shengyin smiled slightly. I wonder if you're satisfied with this gift. Chapter 108. When Xian Ku arrived, he just happened to see the sly smile on his junior sister's face. He only felt that his junior sister was really cute like this. He sat down beside Gu Shengyin. I heard a piece of news recently. Gu Shengyin tilted her head to look at him. Xuanke said, it's about you. It said that someone has been poisoned by fire and needs your heart's blood to detoxify the poison. He seemed to be afraid that Gu Shengyin would be worried, so he added, Junior sister, don't worry. Those people can forget about this matter. The blood of a swordsman is very important. Besides, why would my junior sister sacrifice herself for a mere stranger? Don't worry with me here, you don't have to worry. Gu Shengyin looked at him and smiled. Yes, with you here, I'm not afraid. Xuanke's face turned red again. The next day, Gu Shengyin was giving a lecture in the Sword Discourse Hall. When she was leaving, she met Zhao Ximing. What's the matter? Gu Shengyin asked. Zhao Ximing said earnestly, I received news recently that Bai Xinya seems to have been poisoned by fire and needs. He glanced at Gu Shengyin. Your blood is needed to cure her. That Shi Lufeng has always been lawless. Great Grandmaster, you must be careful. Gu Shengyin nodded. I already know about this. When Xian Ku arrived, he saw his junior apprentice sister, who had always been cold and emotionless, standing together with a man wearing the robes of an inner disciple. The two of them were extremely close to each other, and looking at junior apprentice sister's expression, the two of them seemed to be very familiar with each other. He didn't know why, but he remembered the conversation he had with his junior sister before. With his junior sister's charm, she must have many admirers in the sect. Thinking of this, an uncontrollable anger rose in his heart. Junior sister. He quickly walked to Gu Shengyin's side. Zhao Ximing recognized this Lingyun venerable and quickly bowed to him. Senior brother, you're here? Xuanke looked at Zhao Ximing. And this is? Zhao Ximing only felt that Xuanke was looking at him. His eyes were very calm, but he felt as if there was a heavy pressure coming towards him. In just a moment he was drenched in cold sweat. He tried his best to straighten his back and not lose his composure. Seeing this, Xuanke's eyes flashed with a touch of admiration. However, in the next second, when he thought of how close his junior sister was to him, His heart immediately became even more unhappy. Gu Shengyin did not notice his thoughts and only said, "His name is Zhao Ximing." When Xuanke saw that his junior sister's expression didn't change at all when she mentioned Zhao Ximing, he felt a little better. He said, "I have something to talk to you about. Come with me." Gu Shengyin followed Xuanke to Lingyun Peak. "What is it, senior brother?" Xuanke was speechless. He just wanted Gu Shengyin to stay away from Zhao Ximing. What was there to talk about? "Your martial uncle Ling Zhao's disciple. In terms of seniority, in the Star Gauze Sword sect, except for me, everyone else is your junior sister. No matter how much those disciples admire you, it's impossible for you two to be together." Gu Shengyin was confused. Senior brother's strange words, what did he mean? While she was thinking, she suddenly looked up and saw Xuanke's expression. For a moment she had an idea. "Senior brother, could it be that you're enlightened?" Gu Shengyin was secretly delighted, but she did not show it on her face as if she did not understand what he meant. She nodded obediently and said, "I understand. If I want to find a Taoist companion, I will consider a disciple from another sect." Xuanke felt as if a basin of cold water was poured over his head. What did junior sister mean? As long as he thought about how his junior sister, who only knew how to smile and call him senior brother, would one day snuggle in the arms of another man and smile at him like a flower, he felt an endless killing intent in his heart. He looked at Gu Shengyin with a heavy expression. "I forbid it." Chapter 109. Gu Shengyin raised her head. She didn't seem to understand why her normally gentle senior apprentice brother was suddenly so angry. She was a little uneasy. "What's wrong, senior apprentice brother? Did I say something wrong? Could it be that the people outside can't do it?" Xuanke looked at his normally cold junior apprentice sister who was surprised and uneasy because of his words. Her seductive red lips opened and closed, as if waiting for someone to pluck them. A thought that he had never had before suddenly surged in his heart. This thought came too suddenly and too violently. He couldn't control himself, and he didn't want to control himself. So he followed his heart. This kiss came too suddenly. The second before Gu Shengyin was kissed, she was still complaining to the system. "If I knew that being jealous was so useful, I would have used it long ago." After that she fell into a daze. Xuanke's kiss was completely different from his gentle appearance. His right hand tightly held Gu Shengyin's waist, his left hand holding the back of her head, not giving her any chance to escape. She could only weakly put her hands on his shoulders and softly fall into his arms. After the kiss, Xuanke's hand on Gu Shengyin's waist did not let go. He looked at his junior apprentice sister who was half leaning in his arms with a bright red face and slightly panting. The doubts that had been tangled in his heart for a while were solved. So, he actually had this kind of feeling towards his junior apprentice sister. No wonder he would miss her when he didn't see her for a few days, and would feel uncomfortable when he saw her being intimate with other men. He lowered his head and pecked Gu Shengyin's lips again, saying in an incomparably solemn voice, "No, the disciples of the sect can't do it, and the people outside can't do it either. Other than senior apprentice brother, no one can be your Dao companion." Gu Shengyin blushed. Even though they were already an old married couple, hearing such overbearing words of love, her face would still heat up. Seeing that his junior sister seemed to be stunned by his words, Xuanke looked at her with a smile, patiently waiting for her response. Gu Shengyin only regained her senses after a long while. She stared blankly at her senior brother, as if she was frightened. Then her cheeks slowly turned red. Even her white jade-like earlobes were dyed with a layer of pink. Then, she pushed Xuanke away with all her might and ran away. Xian Ku, however, began to smile slowly. Looking at his junior sister's reaction, it was clear that she had feelings for him. At this time, Gu Shengyin was sitting alone. She was in a very good mood and asked some questions that she usually did not dare to ask. "System, how many missions do I need to complete? If she didn't do the quest, would she never see him again? What would happen if I stopped doing quests? Will it be destroyed?" she asked. The system paused for a moment, as if it was looking for an answer. After a while, it said, "There is no limit to the number of missions you can complete in the 3,000 worlds under Master's control. The target that the host inquired about could not be found. Last question, the host can rest assured. You are Master's most perfect creation, so you will not be abandoned. Although she did not get the answer she wanted, Gu Xingyin still felt relieved. No matter what, to be able to meet him in the quests was already a blessing that others could not ask for. Gu Xingyin was in a very good mood. The wind by the cliff was also very comfortable. She actually fell asleep here unknowingly. When Xuanke came over, he saw his junior sister who was sleeping soundly. His gentle gaze wandered around her face for a moment. Then he bent over and picked her up. Gu Xingyin felt the familiar embrace in a daze. She only rubbed against his chest, let out a few meaningless murmurs, and fell asleep again. Seeing that his junior sister trusted him so much, Xuanke's expression became even more gentle. Chapter 110. Gu Xingyin slept very well. Ever since she came to this world, sword cultivators could meditate to recover their energy. It was very rare for her to fall into a complete sleep like this. Xuanke was reading with his back to her. Gu Xingyin's heart skipped a beat. She quietly stood up, ready to give him a scare. She really hadn't woken up yet. How sharp were the 5 senses of a sword saint? As soon as Gu Xingyin woke up, Xuanke noticed the change in her breathing. Thus, Gu Xingyin, who tried to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it, was easily pulled into the man's arms. Senior martial brother? Gu Xingyin was clearly not used to it. She looked at Xuanke shyly. How could he have known that she would look like this? She had just woken up and her hair and clothes were a bit messy. Her eyes were also misty. The corners of her eyes and nose were bright red. Her neck revealed a trace of delicate collarbone. Xuanke's eyes darkened. He suppressed the angry thoughts in his heart and said to Gu Xingyin, "When martial uncle comes out of seclusion, I will go and ask for junior martial sister's hand in marriage. When I get his approval, I will go to the Gu clan to give the betrothal gifts. Martial uncle will preside over our marriage." Although Gu Xingyin was a bit uncomfortable, she still nodded. When Venerable Ling Xiao found out about this, he was very happy. He didn't have long to live. The only thing he was worried about was this female disciple of his. He had seen Xuanke's character and strength. As her master, he was naturally happy to see them become Dao companions. After his master agreed, it was time to go to the clan. Junior martial sister, you go back to the clan first. In the future, I will ask martial uncle to make the decision and personally go to the Gu clan to give the betrothal gifts. Xuanke said to Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin nodded. She knew that this was the custom of this world. Xuanke personally sent junior martial sister to the Stellar Sword Sect's mountain gate. He was looking forward to their next meeting. At that time, his junior sister would be his rightful and proper person. At this moment, Xuanke had never imagined that meeting his junior sister again would not be the beautiful scene he had expected. At that time, he even wanted to destroy the world to vent the hatred in his heart. Gu Xingyin had sent a message to her family in advance. She did not have much affection for the Gu clan. After all, other than living in the Gu clan when she was 8 years old, she had not returned to her original body for more than 10 years. Someone. Gu Xingyin stopped. Come out, she said indifferently. A black-robed figure suddenly appeared in front of Gu Xingyin. Little girl, you have sharp senses? The figure laughed strangely. Gu Xingyin had already unsheathed her long sword. She could feel the strength of the person in front of her. He was probably not someone she could withstand. When the black-robed man saw her appearance, he did not care at all. A sword emperor who is not even 20 years old, you are indeed talented as expected of the 10th level Ice Soul Sword Heart. But you are unlucky to have met. He suddenly stopped talking. In the next moment, he had already appeared behind Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin did not even have time to draw her sword. She felt her vision go black. Sword sect. This was the last consciousness Gu Xingyin had before she fainted. When she woke up again, she found herself in a luxurious room. However, there was a thin black chain around her hands and feet. She frowned. If she was not mistaken, this black chain was made of meteorites. It was specially made to imprison sword cultivators. She tried to circulate the qi in her dantian. As expected, it was empty. System, where am I? Chapter 111. Before the system answered, Gu Shengyin probably knew where she was. The door was opened with a creak, and a familiar face of Gu Shengyin appeared in front of her. Shi Lufeng. Gu Shengyin secretly said, I tried to guard against it, but I didn't expect that I still couldn't avoid this plot. Shi Lufeng took Gu Weixin's heart-blood for by Xinya. Even if she avoided meeting Shi Lufeng, she still couldn't avoid it. Shi Lufeng came in and saw that Gu Shengyin was awake. A trace of surprise flashed across his face, but it was quickly hidden. Ice Heart Sword Emperor, I've heard a lot about you. He greeted with a smile. Gu Shengyin glanced at him and said coldly, What does this mean? Shi Lufeng saw the other party's cold and arrogant attitude and didn't care. I think the Ice Heart Sword Emperor also knew the news that my lover was poisoned by fire and needed something to detoxify. Gu Shengyin, my heart's blood? Her eyes stared straight at Shi Lufeng. Shi Tian Pavilion's young pavilion master has ever thought, I Gu Wei Xian's heart blood, she cannot afford. Shi Lufeng only felt that the woman's gaze was too oppressive. He even had the idea of avoiding it for a moment, which made him feel embarrassed. He sneered and said, It's not up to the Ice Heart Sword Emperor to worry about it. I'll arrange it. Gu Shengyin sneered. Is Shitian Pavilion ready to bear the anger of my master and senior brother? Shi Liufeng's heart flashed a trace of guilty conscience. This time he caught Gu Shengyin. He didn't tell his father that he lived in Shitian Pavilion, because he knew that his father must not offend the Star Sword sect, which had 2 sword saints, for Xinya. But in front of Gu Shengyin he naturally wouldn't show it. His tone was full of malice. As long as you don't say it, who will know that the Ice Heart Sword Emperor came to me before he disappeared? Gu Shengyin's heart sank. Shi Liufeng's meaning was clearly to get rid of the donkey after it had outlived its usefulness, destroying the corpse and erasing all traces. After Shi Lufeng left, Gu Shengyin called out to the system, Can you help me unlock this chain? The system replied, I'm sorry, host. The system is unable to exert any external force on anything in this world. Gu Shengyin, then can you help me contact the people outside? The system said, Hold on, let me check the authority. The system can randomly send a distress signal to anyone that the host has come into contact with. Gu Shengyin said helplessly, What if it's an outer sect disciple that you've only met once? The system said, The system authorization can only be issued once. This should be what the humans call relying on luck? Gu Shengyin nearly choked. Although Gu Shengyin complained that the system was unreliable, it was still their only hope. Gu Shengyin only hoped that the system could randomly select a more reliable person. Zhao Ximing had just returned from sword practice. Ever since he used the fiery eye fluid to supplement the secret technique to refine his sword heart, his realm had improved very quickly. Now, he was very confident that he could get a good ranking in the upcoming Inner Sect Grand Competition, and strive to be accepted as a disciple by one of the elders. He thought of that figure that was as cold as snow. If that was the case, would he be closer to her? He didn't expect to be able to stand beside her. He only wanted to be able to look at her from afar. At this moment, a white light appeared in front of him. A row of fluorescent words slowly appeared in the air. Gu Weixin is in trouble. Shitian Pavilion Linquan Villa, save him quickly. Chapter 112. The light quickly dissipated as if it had never existed. Zhao Ximing didn't dare to hide anything. He immediately went to see the sect master. Are you serious? Sage Xing. He suddenly stood up from his seat. Junior Granduncle was the focus of the Star Luo Sword sect, so there couldn't be any mistakes. Zhao Ximing shook his head. I only received this strange message. I didn't have time to check if it was true, so I hurried to see you. Xing. He glanced at him. You did well. I'll deal with this as soon as possible. Xing. He scanned the outside with his divine sense and issued several orders. Soon, the feedback he received caused him to frown. Ling Xiao Knight was in seclusion, Ling Yun Knight wasn't in the sect, and Junior Granduncle wasn't in the sect. Inform Xing Yu, Xing Yun, and Xing Feng to come to Star Luo Feng. Zhao Ximing didn't know what decision the sect master had made. After coming down from Star Luo Feng, he used several godly travel talismans and rushed to Linquan Villa. Gu Xingyin felt very cold. The feeling of having her essence blood forcibly extracted was really uncomfortable. Even though the system had shielded her from pain, the dizziness and the gradual coldness caused by excessive blood loss didn't disappear. Will I really die here? She forced herself to ask the system. The system seemed to answer something, but Gu Xingyin didn't hear it. She fell asleep. Young master, more than half of the essence blood in her heart has been extracted. It's more than enough to treat the fire poison. Shi Lufeng nodded with satisfaction. You did well. Get rid of this person for me. Remember, don't leave any traces. He took the jade bottle filled with Gu Xingyin's blood and left. The remaining person came to the bed. He was about to make a move when he saw Gu Xingyin's pale face due to excessive blood loss. He suddenly hesitated. He looked greedily at Gu Xingyin's snow-white face and felt his throat go dry. He murmured, "It's a pity to kill such a stunning beauty like her. Why don't you let me have some fun before she dies?" Of course, he couldn't do it here. Otherwise, the young master would definitely blame him. The man picked up the unconscious Gu Xingyin and walked out through a secret passage. They went all the way to a desolate and uninhabited place. What an exquisite person! The man's finger lingered on Gu Xingyin's face as a hint of madness flashed through his eyes. The proud daughter of the heavens had caused such a perfect person to be torn apart. This was truly a matter that made one's blood boil. He lowered his head and slowly unbuttoned Gu Xingyin's clothes. The system looked a little anxious, but no matter how it called out, Gu Xingyin did not respond at all. Gu Xingyin's belt had already been taken off, and her snow-white outer garment was spread open, revealing an equally snow-white inner garment. The man's throat couldn't help but swallow a few times. His hands were trembling with excitement. He was ready to remove the eyesore. Suddenly, his body shook, as if he had been attacked by something invisible. His whole body softly fell to the ground. The system ignored him. It was the system's product. This person would not wake up for 10 days to half a month. Host, quickly wake up. The system looked at the host's increasingly pale face and couldn't help but feel anxious. It had never been so annoyed. It was only a guidance system, unlike some of its peers who could provide physical help to the host. Someone came? The system sensed the arrival of the person and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Chapter 113. Zhao Shiming was worrying about how to enter the waterside villa. The Washing Heavens pavilion was heavily guarded. It was a fool's dream for a swordsman like him to sneak in. An indescribable feeling attacked his heart, making him involuntarily walk in a certain direction. The more he walked, the more intense the feeling became until he saw the figure lying on the ground. Damn it! With just a glance, Zhao Shiming understood what had happened. He quickly ran forward and helped Gu Xingyin up. Great Martial Granduncle? Great Martial Granduncle? Only then did he realize that something was wrong with Gu Xingyin. Her face was pale and her breathing was weak. He reached out his hand and felt Gu Xingyin's pulse. Washing Heaven's pavilion. Zhao Shiming's eyes were almost red. Martial Granduncle's appearance clearly showed that his blood essence was almost completely drained. He trembled as he covered Gu Xingyin's clothes and tied her belt. Then he walked to the unconscious man. Although he didn't know why the man was unconscious, Zhao Shiming didn't want to know. He unsheathed his sword and swung it down. System. Well done. Zhao Shiming didn't dare to delay. He fed Gu Xing a qi-nourishing pill and said, "Sorry for the offense." Then, he carried her and rushed toward the Stellar Sword sect. Xuanke, who was fighting with an overlord-class demonic beast in the distant western wasteland, suddenly felt a wave of panic. He didn't know where this feeling came from. He only felt that something unbearable had happened. Junior sister. His pupils shrank and his face turned pale. He took a look at the moon-crowned serene lotus that hadn't fully matured yet. This was a gift he had prepared for his junior sister. Now, he could only give it up for now. The few Taoists of the Stellar Sword sect arrived at the waterside villa. Taoist Xing Yu's divine sense swept out. The divine sense belonging to the sword sect instantly surrounded the entire waterside villa and didn't miss a single corner. However, she didn't find Martial Granduncle's figure. She frowned doubtfully. Could it be that the information they received was wrong? She could clearly see that in one of the rooms, there was a thin and weak woman whose body was abnormally flushed. She was half lying and being fed a bowl of bright red medicine. How was that medicine? It was clearly a bowl of blood. Sage Xingyu suddenly recalled the rumor from a few days ago. Wasn't that woman suffering from fire poison? That bowl of blood? Sage Xingyu's face instantly darkened. She didn't say anything, but directly pulled out her sword and slashed at the Spirit Spring Manor. Junior sister, what's wrong? Reverend Xing Yun and Reverend Xing Feng, who were traveling together, looked at Reverend Xingyu in surprise. Sage Xingyu told them about his previous guess. How dare he from the heavens washing pavilion? Several elders were unable to restrain their anger. At this time, several disheveled figures flashed out. It was Shi Lufeng by Xinya and the others. They were sent by the Shitian Pavilion Master to protect him, and they managed to escape the calamity. Even so, the Sword Sect's sword was not easy to receive, and they seemed to be in a sorry state. Who are you people? Why did you suddenly attack my Linquan resort? Shi Lufeng recognized the Starnet Sword Sect's attire on the elders. His expression changed, and he forced himself to put on a brave front. Sage Xingyu flipped her hand and slashed it by Xinya. Block her. Shi Liufeng's eyes were about to split as he shouted to the two sword venerables beside him. Puff! The two sword venerables joined forces and suffered serious injuries, but they could only block Sage Xingyu's attack. Where is our young martial granduncle now? Sage Xingyu's face was frosty. Shi Lufeng gritted his teeth. What young martial granduncle? I don't know him at all. Seeing him like this, Sage Xingyu snorted. Without saying anything, she slashed at him again. Chapter 114. Shi Lufeng looked at the two sword venerables lying on the ground with a pale face. He never thought that the Star Sword sect would be so overbearing. Even without concrete evidence, they dared to injure people. He said sternly, "Are you declaring war on the Washing Heavens Pavilion?" Sage Xingyu wanted to attack again but was stopped by Sage Xingyun. Bring these two back to the sect and wait for the sect master to make a decision, Sage Xingyun said. He looked at the two people on the ground as if he was looking at two dead objects. Xuanke returned to the Star Sword sect and received a message from Sage Xingluo in his cave. He was about to head to the Washing Heavens Pavilion when he sensed a familiar aura. It was Junior Sister. His figure flashed and disappeared from sight. Zhao Shiming carried the person in his arms and rushed for an entire day. When he saw the Star Sword sect in front of him, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. A huge pressure descended and almost made him kneel on the ground. Fortunately, in the next moment, the pressure disappeared without a trace, and his arms became empty at the same time. Suppressing the disappointment in his heart, Zhao Shiming only had time to see a figure flash by. Xuanke's hands that were holding Gu Shengyin were trembling. The breathing of the junior sister in his arms was so weak. Her face was so pale that it was transparent. It was as if she would disappear in the next second. Sage Xingluo was the first to know that Gu Shengyin was rescued. In the next moment, Sage Xingyu and the rest returned to the sect. He immediately went to the Lingyun Peak but was blocked by the restriction outside Xuanke's cave. This block lasted for half a month. Until half a month later, Xuanke walked out. Sage Xingluo thought that he was looking at Venerable Lingxiao. Xuanke said coldly to Sage Xingluo, "Guard Junior Sister for me." Sage Xingluo asked, "Where is Martial Granduncle going?" Xuanke's eyes were filled with killing intent. It's time to settle the score between Junior Sister and the Washing Heavens Pavilion. In less than 2 days, the news of Venerable Lingyun of the Star Sword sect massacring the entire Washing Heavens Pavilion spread throughout the sky below world. From then on, the Heavenly Cleansing Pavilion no longer existed in this world. Shi Lufeng, who was locked up in the Star Gathering Sword sect's water prison, accidentally learned of this news. Impossible! I hid this from my father, so he didn't know about it. Your Star Azura Sword sect can't do this. He couldn't believe it. The Starnet Sword sect disciple in charge of the guard looked at him with a face full of resentment. Whether it's true or not, you just have to go out and take a look to know. It spread throughout the entire great sky below world. From now on, there's no more Heaven's Washing Pavilion. Alright, almost forgot. You actually dared to harm great Martial Granduncle. You will never be able to go out again. Washing Heaven's Pavilion collapsed onto the ground, exhausted. He had originally hoped that his father would come and rescue him, but he didn't expect that the Star Azura Sword sect would actually act so ruthlessly. He had never thought that just because he did something so insignificant for the woman he loved, he would actually ruin the thousands of years of foundation of the Heaven's Washing Pavilion and the lives of countless disciples. It was all because of Bai Xinya. It was all her fault. He looked at Bai Xinya, who was curled up in the corner and struggling in pain, and a trace of hatred suddenly flashed through his eyes. If it wasn't for her, he wouldn't have been so hot-headed as to target the Iceheart Sword Monarch, and thus offend the Star-Gathering Sword sect. If it wasn't for her, he would still be the high and mighty young master of the Washing Heavens Pavilion, pursued by everyone, and not fall into prison and be trampled on by others. If it wasn't for her, the Washing Heavens Pavilion wouldn't have collapsed, and his father wouldn't have died. If it wasn't for her, a trace of madness flashed through Shi Liufeng's eyes. Chapter 115. By the time the disciples of the Star Sword sect found out, Bai Xinya had already been killed by Shi Lufeng, who had fallen into madness. This woman probably never thought that she would one day die in the hands of a man who had always been obedient to her. When Gu Shengyin woke up, she felt weak all over. She was no stranger to this feeling. Gu Shengyin complained, "System, did you notice that I seem to have to experience the same scene in almost every world?" The system was a bit guilty. "Host, there's no way to control this. Every main character's path of growth is not smooth sailing." Gu Xing, Xuanke lifted the curtain and came in, his expression gentle. "Junior sister?" Gu Shengyin smiled and wanted to get up, but found that her body didn't have the strength. She could only helplessly give up. "Senior brother, I didn't sleep for too long, right?" Xuanke greedily looked at this lively junior sister and said softly, "It's only been half a year." Gu Shengyin didn't know why, but she felt that although her senior brother looked the same as before, she had a strange feeling in her heart. She wanted to reach out for a cup, but Xuanke held her down and personally filled her cup. He also refused her request to do it himself and fed her without any explanation. It was clear that her senior brother was treating her like a fragile crystal person. "I'm fine, senior brother." Gu Shengyin was helpless. In this half-year, the Star Sword sect used all of its power to find treasures for Gu Shengyin to nurse her body back to health. Xuanke didn't hesitate to use his true qi every day to help her unblock her meridians. Gu Shengyin's body had gradually returned to normal because of the lack of blood essence. In the face of Gu Shengyin's words, Xuanke smiled gently, "And I know. Come, open your mouth." Gu Shengyin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Does this mean that I know what you mean, but I don't want to do it?" Not only did he not allow Gu Shengyin to do anything herself, but ever since Gu Shengyin woke up, Xuanke had never left her side. He even allowed her to get too close to others. Gu Shengyin also knew that her previous appearance might have frightened him. Although she felt a little helpless, she didn't reject this kind of behavior. Half a year later, the Starnet Sword sect's venerable Ling Xiao presided over the wedding between his personal disciple, the Iceheart Sword Monarch, and his martial nephew, the venerable Ling Yun. It had become a major event in the Great Sky Billow world in recent decades. After a few more years, the Iceheart Sword Sovereign successfully broke through and became the Iceheart Sword Venerable. Honorable Swordmaster Iceheart and her Tao companion, the Cloud-Soaring Supremacy, had a very close relationship. Many people said that they had seen the figures of Honorable Swordmaster Iceheart and the Cloud-Soaring Supremacy all over the Sky Surge Great World. 100 years later, Sword Venerable Iceheart broke through again and became the Iceheart Sword Master. Another 100 years later, the Grand Elder of the Starnet Sword sect, the Venerable Ling Xiao, reached the end of his lifespan and closed his eyes at the Ling Xiao Peak. For the next 500 years, the world never saw the shadow of the Iceheart Sword Master again. Some said that she had suffered a huge blow due to her master's death and was unable to recover from it. Others said that the Iceheart Sword Master had died in a duel 100 years ago. There were also some who said that the Ice Heart Sword Master was only in seclusion to cultivate. Until one day, when the wind was gentle and the sun was bright, the sound of a sword in the 9 heavens rang out. All sword cultivators vaguely sensed something and looked in the same direction. The long swords in their hands were all unsheathed at the same time, and their figures bent in the same direction. 10,000 swords bowed, and a sword saint appeared. That was the direction of the Starnet Sword Sect. From then on, the Ice Heart Sword Sect no longer existed. There was only a sword saint expert, the Venerable Iceheart. Chapter 116. Gu Shengyin found herself in a car. Sitting beside her was a very capable woman wearing a black business suit and a pair of gold-rimmed glasses. Seeing that she had woken up, she took out a bottle of water from her handbag and handed it to her. "You must be tired today. I've pushed back all the jobs for you for the next week. You should have a good rest." Gu Shengyin cheered. "Thank you, Sister Chen." In this world, the original name was Heroine. Now, she was a well-known movie queen in Z country. The woman in the black suit was her manager, Chen Rong. Heroine was a model. She was born with a good foundation. She had a slim waist and long legs. Her facial features were exquisite. When she was 18 years old, she won the international supermodel competition. In 2 years, she was promoted to the ranks of the international supermodels. When she was 20 years old, she started to enter the entertainment industry. Now, she was 24 years old, and she was already the #1 female star in Z country. Because she was a supermodel, Heroine had a strong aura. People who stood beside her would often unconsciously feel suppressed. Therefore, Heroine was affectionately called Her Majestite by her fans. Only Chen Rong knew that this Her Majestite, who was incomparably powerful in front of her fans, was actually a little princess with a pink heart in private. The car soon arrived at the apartment where Heroine lived. This was provided by Heroine's entertainment company, Star Entertainment. It was one of the famous rich areas in Tsinghua City. The security measures were excellent, and even paparazzi would have a hard time entering. Chen Rong personally sent Gu Shengyin to the door of the room. She only left after watching her enter the room. Gu Shengyin felt weak at this time. In her previous world, she was a sword saint. She rarely had this kind of feeling. She walked into the bathroom, filled the bathtub with hot water, dripped essential oil, and soaked herself in. She comfortably moaned and began to organize the information about this world in her mind. The original Heroine was now an internationally renowned movie queen, and the other target was now awkwardly playing a small supporting role. Ming Shujia. This woman was about the same age as Heroine, but her fate was completely different. Her appearance was not too outstanding in the entertainment industry where beauties were everywhere. Her facial features were not very distinctive. Since her debut, she had been receiving some small investment scripts. Even these scripts, she could only play a supporting role. However, at the age of 24, her luck seemed to have changed. First, the director of a low-budget literary film took a fancy to her and informed her to audition for the lead role. No one knew that this unremarkable literary film would actually win the Best Film Award at the internationally renowned film festival at that time. Although she herself did not win the Best Actress award, she became famous because of this and quickly entered the public eye. After that, all kinds of good things came one after another. She took on several scripts that were not well known but had a good reputation after being released. Gradually, she was promoted from a small actress to the ranks of the popular starlets. Everyone thought that she was just lucky. There were even media reports that called her the luckiest artist of the year. However, Gu Shengyin knew that it wasn't because she was lucky, but because Ming Shujia wasn't Ming Shujia at all. The original Ming Shujia fell down while hanging on a wire and was sent to the hospital with a concussion. When she woke up again, no one knew that her soul had changed. Chapter 117. The soul that occupied Ming Shujia's body came from 10 years later, so she knew which of the current scripts would be dark horses and which would be popular. With such a big cheat in her hands, it was hard for Ming Shujia not to be popular. If that was the case, Heroine and her would not have had much interaction, let alone any enmity. However, Heroine was one of the few actors in the entertainment industry who was clean and honest. She had fame, ability, and capital. She did not need to rely on those things to create momentum for herself and fight for resources for herself. Ming Shujia was different. Therefore, during a banquet with an investor, Ming Shujia was met by Ruan Kui, who came to eat with her friends. If a female star was exposed to this kind of thing, especially someone like Ming Shujia who walked the youthful path, her career would be ruined. Actually, they only had a quick glance at each other. Ming Shujia had heavy makeup on, so Ruan Kui did not recognize her at all. However, the next day, Ming Shujia was still exposed to the news of having fun with a rich businessman late at night. Although the photo was vague and there was no real evidence, Ming Shujia's company's PR team dealt with it quickly. At this time, Ming Shujia was not affected. However, she used this opportunity to hate Ruan Kui. She thought that it was her who leaked the news to the media, which put her in danger. Ming Shujia's revenge came quickly. She knew some inside information that others did not know. She even secretly colluded with a rich man who was rumored to be in love with the queen. She promised that as long as he did what she wanted, she would help him get Ruan Kui. The two of them conspired to drug Ruan Kui at a banquet. The rich man could not help but loot a burning house and possess Ruan Kui. He even purposely leaked the news to the media. Ruan Kui's reputation fell to the bottom. At this time, the rich man affectionately said that he had loved her for a long time and was willing to marry her. At that time, Ruan Kui was deeply touched and married him regardless of her manager's objection. However, not long after the marriage, she found that the rich man was not loyal to his marriage. He had other women outside. She was furious, but only received disdainful mockery from her husband. "You're just an actress that everyone hates. Do you really think you're still the queen?" Ruan Kui wanted a divorce, but her husband threatened her with her virginity. Her life was miserable, and her parents, who were university professors, were fired because of her. After muddling along for a few years, she finally embarked on the path of no return, suicide. As for Ming Shujia, she relied on her unique vision and smoothly became the new generation's movie queen. Gu Xingyin calculated the time. Ming Shujia had just accepted an artistic film that would allow her to make a comeback. The cast had just been selected. She had to admit that Song Cici had an amazing talent in fashion design. Inspiration, the dream of all designers. Although these clothes didn't look perfect, some of the details were amazing. Gu Xingyin knew that in the upcoming fashion show, Song Cici would shock the world with a set of male and female frost domain. Chapter 119. Gu Xingyin had a deep impression of the ice and snow domain because it was so famous. The male model was the top international supermodel, Ludwig Gardner. The female model, Cecilia, was not very famous, but she became one of the most popular female supermodels because of this fashion show. At that time, Song Cici was not very famous. Although she did not know why Ludwig, who was already an international supermodel, chose this set of clothes, Gu Xingyin was not willing to give up this opportunity this time. "Cici, are you going to participate in the Tsinghua International Fashion Week this time?" Gu Xingyin asked Song Cici, who was holding the clothes to compare on her. Song Cici paused. "Gu, how did you know?" She was a little surprised. She had never told anyone about this. Tsinghua Fashion Week was one of the top international fashion weeks. Although she was encouraged by her mentor, Kevin, the design director of the international luxury brand CCRU, to show her work at this fashion week, she did not tell anyone. This girl was still a little unconfident and was afraid that others would say that she was overestimating herself. Gu Xingyin said with a smile, "We grew up together. Do you think I don't know what you are thinking?" She continued, "When the time comes, I will be your model, okay?" Song Cici was not just surprised, but pleasantly surprised. She knew how talented Ruan Kui was in the field of modeling. Many international fashion brands had tried to invite her to be their global spokesperson. However, since she entered the entertainment industry 4 years ago, she had not shown up at any fashion week. She was actually willing to step on the runway again for her? Gu Xingyin looked at Song Cici, who seemed to be so touched that she was about to cry. He laughed and said, "Okay, I just believe in your talent. I'm betting that the clothes you design this time can make me stand out in the limelight. If the clothes you design are too ugly, I will regret it. Song Cece exhaled. When she talked about her design, her eyes lit up. Let's go, I will show you. She pulled Gu Shengyin and walked straight into the innermost room. Song Cece took out the key and opened the door. Gu Shengyin realized that the room was surprisingly big, but there were only 2 sets of clothes in the whole room. Song Cece walked to one of the hangers and lifted the curtain covering the clothes. Gu Shengyin's eyes widened instantly. So beautiful! What appeared in front of him was a silver-white female gown. The neckline was a gorgeous lace V-neck design, and the material was light and elegant silk. It was perfect to the touch and fall. The transparent long sleeves were covered with snowflakes, and the layers of the gown were dotted with countless tiny diamonds. It was as if countless snowflakes had fallen around her, blooming with elegant colors under the light. Luxurious beyond compare. Gu Shengyin was amazed. She could tell at a glance that the clothes were inlaid with at least hundreds of small diamonds, all of which were genuine. Song Cece looked at Gu Shengyin's eyes and was also very happy. What do you think? Gu Shengyin took a deep breath and looked at her sincerely. Cece, you will definitely shock the whole world. Song Cece didn't seem to expect to receive such high praise, but she was very happy. Then I will take advantage of your auspicious words. Gu Shengyin asked, have you decided on the male model? Song Cece shook his head. The mentor has seen my work. He said that he already has a suitable male model. Gu Shengyin understood. It turned out that Kevin had come forward. No wonder Ludwig had chosen Song Cece's work at that time. Chapter 120. Sure enough, the next day, Gu Shengyin received a call from Song Cece. Ku, do you know who my mentor found for me? Ludovic Gardner. That's my Prince Charming. To be able to make him walk a show for me in my lifetime, I can die without regrets. Gu Shengyin waited patiently for Song Cece to finish venting her emotions. Then she asked, has it been decided? Song Cece calmed down a little and said, not yet. He will come over this afternoon to see my works. Could come with him. Try it on and see if there is anything that needs to be changed. Gu Shengyin nodded and called her agent. Sister Chen, I plan to participate in the Tsinghua Fashion Week next month. Chen Rong was surprised. You plan to return to the fashion industry? Gu Shengyin shook her head and said with a smile, that's not what I mean. It's just that Cece is going to participate in this fashion week. I promised her that I would be her mute. Chen Rong's tone was a little worried. I know you are very good friends, but although Miss Song is talented, she has never participated in such a big event. What if? Have you considered your image? At Wan Kri's level, every move had to be in line with her identity. She hadn't been on the runway for 4 years. If the effect this time was not satisfactory, it would be a big blow to her reputation. Gu Shengyin knew that Chen Rong was thinking for her. She chuckled. Sister Chen, if you knew who Cece's model was this time, I'm afraid you wouldn't say that. Chen Rong was a little curious. Oh, who is it? Gu Shengyin said softly, Ludovic Gardner. Chen Rong was silent for a few seconds. After a while, she said excitedly, who did you say it was? I didn't hear wrong. Is it Ludovic? King Ludovic of the runway? Gu Shengyin knew that this would be the reaction. This serious and somewhat old-fashioned agent was actually a die-hard fan of Ludwig. Her tone was light as she said, Sai, I'm going to try on some clothes this afternoon. I don't know, maybe we can take a group photo or an autograph or something. Chen Rong interrupted her. Are you at home now? I'll be there in half an hour. How can I miss such an important event? Gu Shengyin hung up the phone. Done. She knew that Chen Rong would not stop her from bringing up Ludwig. Not only was Chen Rong a fan of his, but he was also known as the king of the fashion industry. His shows had never disappointed. In the afternoon, Gu Shengyin came to Song Cece's house as promised. She was chatting with an old man with white hair. Kevin, long time no see. Gu Shengyin greeted him. This person was Song Cece's mentor, the design director of CRU. Luan. Kevin gave her a warm hug. 2 years ago, the two had worked together. At that time, Kevin had asked Ruan Kui to be her exclusive model, but he had been rejected. However, this cute old man had always been thinking about Ruan Kui. The fashion industry is really dim without your figure. Ruan, I heard from Cece that you want to be her model? Kevin's eyes were shining. Gu Xingyi nodded. Great. Kevin praised loudly. The first thing I thought of when I saw this set of clothes was you. Only you can satisfy people's fantasy of the Ice Queen. Chapter 121. Looks like I'm late? A deep male voice sounded. Gu Xingyin followed the sound and looked over. She recognized the man at first glance. It was Ludwig Gardner. Although Ruan Kui had never seen this man before, she had seen his face in magazines many times. But for some people, you would only be able to feel their charm when you meet them in person. Ludwig Gardner's facial features were undoubtedly good-looking. Whether it was his eyebrows, eyes, nose bridge, or even his lips, which were praised by countless people, they were all in just the right places. However, for anyone who saw him in person, the first thing they would notice would definitely not be his appearance, but his aura. It was as if they were facing a king, a god, and they were imprisoned in his omnipresent domain. This was the aura of a top supermodel. Kevin said, "Hey, you're late today. Remember to treat us to dinner later." Ludwig's beautiful blue eyes were like the deep starry sky. His smile was extremely charming. No problem. He turned his head. Then, let me first get to know these two beautiful ladies. Song Cece was already stunned when she saw Ludwig. Only now did she come back to her senses. Looking at the face that was more impactful in reality than in magazines, her face instantly turned red. "Hello, I'm the designer, Song Cece." Ludwig bent down and shook hands with him. Gu Xingyin, on the other hand, greeted him generously. "Hello, Mr. Gardner. I've heard a lot about you." This man was so tall. Ruan Kui was 1.78 meters tall, which was already considered very tall. This man was a head taller than her, so he was definitely more than 1.9 meters tall. Ludwig Gardner winked at him and spoke in authentic Z Nation's language. "What a polite way to address me. You can call me Ludwig, the beautiful Miss Ruan Kui." When he smiled, his eyes seemed to be filled with deep affection, which made people want to drown in them. Gu Xingyin also smiled. "Then, Ludwig, I hope we get along well." This man was indeed charming. If she didn't already have a partner, she might have been moved by him. Kevin suddenly said in a strange tone, "Sigh, poor old Kevin, no one cares about him. The lovely ladies only like handsome young men." Gu Xingyin couldn't help but laugh. Kevin, this old urchin, was really funny. "Let's take a look at the clothes." Song Cece was interrupted and remembered his business. She first showed off her female outfit. "So beautiful!" Ludwig didn't hide the shock in his eyes. He looked at Ruan Kui. "Is Miss Ruan the model for this dress?" Ruan Kui smiled at him. "I'm here for the same reason as Mr. Ludwig." "Then I'm honored." Song Cece opened the men's clothing again. This time, Ludwig looked at the clothes seriously. Finally, he straightened his body and said to Song Cece, "Let's go. Miss Song Cece, you really are an amazing designer." Song Cece was a little nervous. "Then Ludwig, are you willing to be my model?" Ludwig's mouth curved into a charming smile. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he looked at Gu Xingyin. "If Miss Ruan is willing, I naturally have no objections." Chapter 122. His words made everyone look at Gu Xingyin. Kevin even had a hint of ridicule in his eyes. Gu Xingyin smiled calmly and blinked. "Ludwig, if I were a little narcissistic, would I think that you've fallen in love with me?" Ludwig laughed softly. "Miss Ruan Kui is the dream lover of countless people. Maybe I'll really fall in love with you at first sight." Gu Xingyin seemed helpless. "All right, it seems that we're destined to cooperate this time." As soon as she said this, everyone understood what she meant. She agreed. Ludwig stretched out his hand again. "Happy cooperation." Song Cece couldn't wait. "Quick, you two go try on the clothes." "Oh my God, I can't wait to see the combination of His Majesty the King and Her Majesty the Queen. Gu Shengyin took the clothes to the fitting room. When both sides came out, they were shocked by each other's beauty. Gu Shengyin's appearance was originally imposing, and her temperament was different from ordinary people after the tempering of several worlds. This set of clothes seemed to be tailor-made for her. She wore a crown of ice and snow and stood there as if she really was the only queen in the world of ice and snow. Extremely cold and also extremely beautiful. But Ludwig was different. He was the queen's most loyal knight. His style was also silver-white, and the close-fitting design outlined his perfect figure at a glance. The cloak of the same color fell to the ground, adding a sense of sternness. His blue eyes were filled with love and loyalty as he looked at his only queen and knelt down on one knee. "My Majesty!" He leaned over and gently kissed the queen's ring. "Kacha!" Song Cici clutched his chest and held his phone. "I can't take it anymore. Oh my God, I can guarantee that if this photo spreads, many people's blood will be emptied." After being interrupted by Song Cici, the atmosphere disappeared without a trace. Ludwig let go of Gu Shengyin's hand and stood up. Gu Shengyin also breathed a sigh of relief. Being stared at by Ludwig like that, she actually felt her heart race. The few of them discussed their own ideas again. By the time they finished talking, they realized that it was already dinner time. Ludwig said, "I promised Kevin to treat you guys to a meal. I wonder if you guys are willing to do me the honor?" Of course, they had no objections. Gu Shengyin remembered something and called Chen Rong to come over. Chen, fangirl, Rong successfully got a group photo and an autograph of her idol and left with a satisfied look. The four of them did not expect that the next day, the news of them eating together would be exposed. The movie queen dines with the king of the fashion industry. Movie queen Ruan Kui, desk mate with CU designer and international supermodel, is suspected to be returning to the fashion industry. Ruan Kui and Ludwig had an intimate conversation, and the two are suspected to be deeply in love. Most of these reports were just groundless accusations. Gu Shengyin just skimmed through them and put them aside. Her Weibo account blew up frowny face. "Aw, Her Majesty the Queen and His Majesty the King are together? My baby's life is complete. Is Her Majesty the Queen returning to the fashion industry? I beg Her Majesty the Queen to return to the runway. Her Majesty the Queen is so beautiful. Ludwig is so handsome. Who is that foreign man? He's so handsome, but Her Majesty the Queen belongs to Brother Fong. Don't tear apart Brother Fong and Ku. I beg Her Majesty the Queen to return to the runway. I beg Her Majesty the Queen to return to the runway +1. I beg Her Majesty the Queen to return to the runway +2. I beg Her Majesty the Queen to return to the runway +1. Chapter 123. Gu Shengyin was lying on the bed with a facial mask on her face as she scrolled through the comments on her phone. Chen Rong glanced at her and said, "This won't affect you much, but don't tell anyone that you're going to participate in Tsinghua Fashion Week." Gu Shengyin said, "I know, Sister Chen." Chen Rong left quickly. Gu Shengyin opened her account and sent a message, "I met Ludwig. He's really handsome." After sending the message, she turned off her phone, washed up, and went to bed. When she turned on her phone the next day, she found that her Weibo post had been reposted countless times. It turned out that Ludwig had followed her and reposted her Weibo post with a comment, "You're also very beautiful, Your Majesty." He even added an emoticon. Fuck, when I think of the powerful king using emoticons, I'm so shamelessly cute. This is so full of JQ. What's with this faint feeling of pampering? Tell me this isn't my imagination. This isn't your imagination +1. This isn't your imagination +2. This isn't your imagination +3. This isn't your imagination plus ID number. I'm here to destroy the formation. Although I'm a firm supporter, I somehow feel that the King X Queen CP is also very cool. What should I do? Long live the two kings. Long live the two kings. At this time, Gu Shengyin's phone rang. A director contacted me today. He has a movie on hand and asked if you want to take it? Chen Rong said over the phone. Gu Shengyin wailed, "Sister Chen, what happened to the 1-week holiday? Don't you love me anymore?" Chen Rong was cold and unmoved. The director is Li Fengyun. Gu Shengyin immediately changed her words. What movie? Let me see. Chen Rong knew her reaction would be like this. She said, I've already replied to Director Li. I'll give him a reply tomorrow. I'll go to your place this afternoon. Gu Shengyin actually had a rough idea of which movie it was. Li Fengyun was one of the most famous directors in Country Z. His style was known for its grandeur and strong rhythm, which was a necessity for commercial films. However, Director Li's films were always able to dig out a trace of humanistic feelings amidst the passion. He was one of the rare directors who was well received and popular. Calculating the time, among the movies that he had been preparing recently, there was only one that required an actress of Ruan Kui's caliber, Divinity. This film was known as a milestone in Z Country's film industry. Not only did it reach the peak of 10 billion in box office sales, but it also swept all the awards in that year's film festival, creating a brand new model. In this movie, the main lead and the main supporting roles all became the most popular people in the world. At that time, Ruan Kui had accepted another drama. It was a foreign commercial blockbuster that had also cost a lot of money to shoot, but it was overshadowed by Divinity. This time, Gu Shengyin wouldn't give up this opportunity. Moreover, it seemed that Ming Shujia also played a supporting role in this film. She wouldn't give Ming Shujia any chance to stand out. At this time, what was Ming Shujia doing? She was trying her best to avoid a perverted hand on her thigh. But you're not willing? The drunk man opened his mouth and his breath reeked of alcohol. Why are you still pretending to be a chaste woman? If you're so noble, how did you get those photos? I'll be frank here. If you accompany me for one night, I'll throw money at you for that role. How about it? The man looked at her from the corner of his eyes. Ming Shujia's heart trembled with anger. Her face turned pale, but in the end she revealed a sweet smile and slowly placed her hands on the man's chest. No matter what, she couldn't lose this movie. Chapter 124. Chen Rong came quickly. As Gu Shengyin expected, she had the script for Divinity. Gu Shengyin looked at it for a while and took a deep breath. Sister Chen, tell Director Li that I'll take this script. Chen Rong wasn't surprised. She nodded. I'll reply to them later. We'll discuss the details later. Hello, Sister Kui. Hello, Sister Ruan. Gu Shengyin walked in the company and many artists took the initiative to greet her. Gu Shengyin returned a friendly smile. A few newly signed artists were secretly discussing. Oh my God, movie queen Ruan is so friendly. She doesn't put on airs at all. As newly signed artists who weren't well known, they had learned a lot in the past few days. Many A-list and B-list artists didn't even look at them. They didn't expect the most famous movie queen Ruan Kui to be so kind. The agent in charge of guiding them looked at them and said, Movie queen Ruan is famous for her good temper in the entertainment industry. She never makes things difficult for newcomers. Ruan Kui's company, Star Entertainment, was one of the biggest entertainment companies in the country. She had a few award-winning actors and actresses under her wing, as well as many A-listers. However, even here, Ruan Kui was undoubtedly the #1 star. A clear voice sounded. Gu Shengyin smiled at him. Brother Fong. The person who came was wearing a light gray windbreaker. He was slender and had gentle eyes. Fang Ming, 30 years old, had won the Movie King twice and was one of the male artists who had worked with Ruan Kui the most. They were called the best on-screen couple. Many fans hoped that they could become a couple and called them the Fangka couple. Fang Ming had always liked Ruan Kui, but Ruan Kui had always treated him as a good friend and a good partner. She had even explicitly rejected him before. However, Fang Ming didn't seem to have given up. The two were here to participate in the promotion of a summer blockbuster that the company was promoting this year. Fang Han and Ruan Kui weren't the main characters. Fang Han played the brother of the main character and was barely an important supporting role. As for Ruan Kui, she only appeared once. When the filming of the movie started, both of their schedules were very tight. The company asked them to spare some time just to use their reputation to promote the movie. It had to be said that the company's move was very successful. Many fans of the two were willing to spend dozens of yuan to buy a movie ticket just to see their idols in action. But I'm the main character. Those two dressing rooms are my favorite. Why did you give them to someone else? As soon as the two of them reached the dressing room, they heard the voice complaining. Next, a voice that sounded like an agent was advising her, "My lady, what are Yuan Qi and Fang Ming's positions? Just bear with it for now. When you become more famous than the two of them, the best resources will naturally be yours." As the manager spoke, he opened the door as if he wanted to get something. When he saw Gu Shengyin and Fang Ming standing at the door with a faint smile, his face froze. He forced a smile and said, "Sister Yuan and Brother Fang are here? Are you here to get styled for the press conference?" He quickly stood aside and made way for the two of them. The two of them didn't speak. Chen Rong, who had been following behind them, slowly said, "It's the company's rules which artists use which level of equipment. If Miss Lin has any objections, you can reflect to the company." Then, without even looking at the manager's extremely ugly expression, he walked in leisurely. Chapter 125. Gu Shengyin had a good impression of Lin Baihe. She came from a good family. This time, she was able to act in this movie because of her good looks and acting skills. The most important reason was that her father, who spoiled his daughter, spent a lot of money on the crew. It just so happened that several famous artists in Star Entertainment couldn't spare the time, so the role was given to her. At this moment, her agent was probably very anxious. In the original plot, Lin Baihe didn't develop well. She had a bad temper and was arrogant. Because she ridiculed Ming Shujia, the latter hated her. After Ming Shujia became famous, she didn't forget to suppress her. Lin Baihe had always been a mediocre artist in the entertainment circle. Sure enough, when Gu Shengyin went back, Lin Baihe's agent took her to apologize to Yuan Qi. "Sister Yuan, I'm really sorry. Baihe is young and ignorant. She offended the senior and apologizes to you." Lin Baihe, who was standing behind him, stepped forward and bowed at Gu Shengyin, apologizing in a low voice. Gu Shengyin saw that her eyes were red. She must have been scolded by her agent. She waved her hand. In this entertainment circle, it's better to keep your mouth shut. After Gu Shengyin walked away, the agent glared at Lin Baihe. "Fortunately, it's Sister Yuan today. If it's someone with a bad temper, you won't be able to survive in Star Entertainment." When Gu Shengyin went downstairs, she unexpectedly saw Ming Shujia. She was walking into the elevator with several young actresses. Gu Shengyin raised her eyebrows. She remembered that Ming Shujia wasn't an artist in Star Entertainment. What was going on? Ming Shujia was here to sign a contract. She used to be in a small, unknown company. There weren't any famous celebrities, and she didn't have a powerful agent. Ming Shujia knew that it was better to lean on a big tree. Star Entertainment had a big background and resources. Although there were many artists and competition was fierce, she was confident that she could stand out. Gu Shengyin was surprised when he learned that Ming Shujia had successfully signed a contract with Star Entertainment. She was a 24-year-old female artist who was still a B-lister and had such rumors about her. She was even able to sign a contract with Star Entertainment, which had always been strict. Ming Shujia was not a simple woman. However, this is more interesting, isn't it? Gu Shengyin smiled slowly. The stronger the opponent, the greater the sense of achievement when he could trample her under his feet. Gu Shengyin was in a cafe with not many people, so she did not know that she had been recognized by a fan and that her smile had been photographed. A certain forum suddenly exploded. OP was bored and came out for a cup of coffee. "I didn't expect to be so lucky to meet Her Majesty the Queen." He even secretly took a photo. "My HP bar is empty, and I'm already kneeling under Her Majesty the Queen's skirt." Let's cut to the chase. Take the picture. On the sofa on the second floor, Her Majesty the Queen's looks are off the charts. That devilish smile is so mesmerizing. Desktop has been changed. Mommy asked me why the screen is so clean. Looking at the decorations around, I can already guess where this place is. Damn, the OP is a tycoon. Upstairs, don't go. Where is this place? I want to form a group and fight Her Majesty the Queen. Upstairs +1. Oh my God, I'm turning gay. Why are you so handsome, Her Majesty the Queen? Her Majesty the Queen is my husband. If you don't agree, let's fight. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Chapter 126. When Gu Xingyin arrived at the restaurant, she saw Ludwig looking at something on his phone. Her eyes were sharp, and she immediately saw herself on the screen. Looking at the background, she must have been secretly photographed in the cafe earlier. When Ludwig saw her, he didn't have the slightest intention of restraining himself. He saved the photo in the album right in front of her. Gu Xingyin was speechless. Ludwig smiled and said, "It's beautiful." Gu Xingyin said, "Thank you." Ludwig moved the menu in front of her. "What would you like to eat?" Seeing her look around, he smiled considerately. "I heard Miss Song recommend it. She said it's very safe here and we don't have to worry about being photographed by the paparazzi." After Gu Xingyin ordered the dishes, the waiter who had been waiting by the side quickly took the food and left. Ludwig was pouring wine for Gu Xingyin. His slender and fair fingers gripped the goblet, and the translucent red wine reflected in it was exceptionally beautiful. Gu Xingyin was dazed. This man's every move was full of indescribable charm. Wine for the beauty. Ludwig raised the wine glass in his hand. Gu Xingyin took a sip and praised, "You speak Z country well." Ludwig smiled. "My grandmother is Z country. I like Z country very much." The food was quickly served. Gu Xingyin ate slowly and elegantly. Ludwig looked at her the whole time. His gaze was too intense, and Gu Xingyin couldn't ignore it. She put down the cutlery in her hand. "Mr. Gardener," Ludwig interrupted her. "Call me Ludwig." Gu Xingyin said, "Okay, Ludwig. Is there something wrong with my makeup today?" Ludwig smiled and said, "No, you're very beautiful today." Gu Xingyin asked, "Then why are you staring at me?" Ludwig smiled brightly. "It's because Kui is good-looking. There's an old saying in Z country that a beauty is a feast for the eyes. I plan to give it a try and see if it's true." Gu Xingyin. Okay, he was sure that Ludwig was making fun of him. But she couldn't get angry because of this. That would be too ungentlemanly. Gu Xingyin thought for a moment and said to Ludwig, "Ludwig, if you continue like this, you might not feel hungry, but the lady opposite you will be so embarrassed that she won't be able to eat." Ludwig blinked, his blue eyes full of sincerity. Gu Xingyin gritted her teeth in her heart, but she still had a perfect smile on her face. Because, being stared at by such a handsome man like you, no woman can concentrate. How come she never knew that Ludwig was so shameless? Then I know. Ludwig seemed to understand something. "Can you like my face?" he said with certainty. Gu Xingyin had never seen such a shameless person. She smiled and gritted her teeth. Everyone loves beauty. Ludwig suddenly understood. He suddenly smiled brightly and said to Gu Xingyin, "So, Kui, let's go out?" Gu Xingyin. "Wait, what kind of development is this?" Ludwig continued, "Look. You like my face, which means you have a good impression of me. And it just so happens that I like you very much. So let's go out." Gu Xingyin calmly interrupted him. "If I remember correctly, we've only met once. This is the second time we've met." No. Ludwig refuted her very seriously. "In fact, this is the third time we've met. The first time we met was at the airport. You were with Miss Song." He looked at Gu Xingyin and said affectionately, "Miss Ruan Kui, I fell in love with you at first sight." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.